Amanda Kate, transformational coach. It's so fascinating. Early age where I suffered from migraines, signed off by my doctor as a healthy young person. And so that was very frustrating. And Amanda just shared something with me, and she's going to share with you how she began healing herself. And she dealt with similar situation where conventional medicine unfortunately failed us at certain point, and we had to take over. What I have learned through my life to heal myself, I needed to understand myself.
Hey.
Let me know how you became aware of you being not whole.
Yeah. I think I had always worried that I was not whole. I always worried that I was fundamentally flawed. I ticked all of the boxes. I was a white Church of England raised, middle class, woman with relative privilege. But the band of my accepted behavior was so narrow that if I even wobbled outside it, I'd get, pushed back into that band. And so I never really got to explore who I was. And then that obviously led into relationships where nobody could actually get to know me because I didn't even know myself. I had no clue who I was because I was so busy looking at what everybody else wanted for me and who everybody else I thought it wanted and expected me to be, that I was putting different people into different situations. I wonder who's going to be liked. And so that was a big part of it. And in the end, come 2013, I was needing 3-hour naps in the afternoon. By that time I was suffering for about 13 days a month with my menstrual cycle. I'd have about 6 days in the middle of the month and around 7 days at the end of the month. And I only know that because I was tracking all of my symptoms. And I was seeing all these doctors and they're like, you're perfectly healthy. You're fine. Your blood tests are great. We don't know what's wrong with you. So they send me to a gynecologist and he goes to put me on antidepressants. And that was really when the lights and sirens were like, what, no. That was really what pushed me down that natural therapies route. I started seeing a naturopath, and then from there I saw a chiropractor and then started with a Chinese doctor, and it just kind of grew from there, really. Yeah. And it was really about then getting in touch with, okay, so what was I eating? And it was really based in the physical still. So I was looking at this physical body, this physical meat suit that we're walking around in. But the interesting thing is, and you mentioned Dr. Bruce Lipton to me before, who works with epigenetics, and that is basically the way our genes express themselves. There's, mental, emotional, spiritual, psychological, energetic, metaphysical, transformational, relational, financial, like all of those different things feed into the picture of who we are. Yeah. Even the roles that we play feed into the picture of who we are. And so many people are so short-sighted on the physical body is all there is. And so that's all we're going to work with. A few people go to sort of, I guess, that mind-body-spirit connection. And I was like, I've never heard of this, but book me in. I'm willing to try anything because I'm so broken. And I still remember my first kinesiologist became a teacher of mine. But in that first session with them, they said to me, why are you here, as the usual sort of basic thing? And I said, I am so broken. I need to fix myself to save my marriage. And so it was very, very interesting. Later in that session, once we'd started working through some stuff, they said to me, you have no idea how emotionally abused you are, do you? And I went, oh, that makes sense with, these major people over here in my life. But it took me another 4 months to see my main abuser. And it took me another 4 months to leave.
Right. So I don't know why you didn't see that you wanted to fix the marriage, but you knew that you have to fix yourself first.
Yeah. I did. And because I felt I was broken. Now, what I've learned on the journey is I was never broken. I was carrying a whole heap of stories that I believed were true about myself. And I was carrying a lot of weight about past traumatic experiences that I didn't know were traumas. And I was starting to unpack them slowly. and work out what fit for me and what didn't anymore, what I wanted to carry forward and what I didn't anymore.
Right.
And that created a whole heap of different types of wounds for me.
How does your body respond to trauma?
Our entire nervous system, that's the whole point of it, is to tell us when there's danger around. And so we have two parts of the nervous system, or we actually have a number of parts to the nervous system, but the main two parts are our parasympathetic nervous system, which is our rest, repair, digest, and our sympathetic nervous system, which is our fight and flight. And when we're looking at the balance between those two, so the parasympathetic nervous system helps us breathe, it helps us digest food, it helps us do all of those things that we don't really need to think about. Our sympathetic nervous system gets switched on when there's stress, and it keeps us safe and it keeps us alive. And what happens is we perceive stress as coming in. Now, what you've got to remember in this modern world is we are still built not for this modern world. We're built for, coexisting in tribes with a community, and yet we hurtle through the world, super fast pace. We've always got, when we're on our phones, those flashing images, the dinging notifications, we've got noise and lights and sirens and electrical signals running through the air. If we've got heating or air conditioning on, it's making noise, and we are constantly bombarded through all of our senses. And they think that we could be exposed to anything up to 400 billion bits of information every single second. Now, of that, our body can process in a non-stressed state around 2,000 bits of information per second. So there's a lot of life we're missing out on. Oh. Now, when we're stressed, we process even less of that information because we're trying to tune out as much as we can to keep ourselves safe. So it's quite interesting when you start to think how much of the world we're missing because so much information is coming in at once and we can only process so much. But how do we prioritize what we process? Well, that is through our stories, through our perception, through our upbringing, through our own indication of what we think is important. My level of importance was about people pleasing and making sure everybody else was happy. And so in that people pleasing part of myself, I was constantly shifting and changing who I was and how I expressed myself and make myself fit in. It sounds crazy, but we need to be accepted by our tribe for us to live because it's safety in numbers. And if you're not accepted by the tribe, you get cast out into the wilderness and you die. And so everything that we filter through goes really back to that really basic, almost prehistoric nature of, even though we're not consciously thinking that, that's where our body goes to. So our body starts activating the nervous system. What we're doing in energy medicine is trying to rewire that nervous system so that we're not seeing the same threat. Because I saw threat everywhere. In that, I was constantly on high alert.
Yeah. So that led you in a direction of self-care and self-love. And how did you understand this? Obviously, you were fighting that because you weren't brought up into doing it for yourself.
Mm. And that, again, talking about why I call myself a transformational coach, this is exactly why. I went into healing with the idea that I needed to save my marriage. I have completely transformed. As I started to work, through this energy medicine, through a lot of different ways. So it wasn't just with my kinesiologist. I was working with my psychologist. I was doing her mindfulness courses. I was working with the Chinese doctor still, who was doing acupuncture, cupping, and doing the herbal support as well. I was working with a chiropractor still. I was working with a personal trainer. My personal trainer used to joke, if I just had a chef, I'd be J-Lo because I had so many people on my staff. But it was literally to keep myself on my feet. I was working with my naturopath still. So I had a lot of people supporting and working with me to get me back to health. And each one of those different modalities gave me so many different things. But kinesiology really was the one for me that drew it all together. It drew all of the changes, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, energetic, transformate, all of those different aspects. It drew them all together for me. So even if I was getting awarenesses with my naturopath, it was like kinesiology that would help me embody those changes and actually make that cellular change in my body. If I was getting changes in some other area, again, that would be knitted into the fabric of who I was through that kinesiology aspect of balancing that energy. So I'd already seen such a massive change in myself in that 6 months that I hopped in the classroom and I learned it myself. And the way I describe it to clients is we're creating this internal scaffolding. That's our internal scaffolding. They're the things that we know that we can do to help ourselves. And then we create external scaffolding. It's the friends that I trust. It is my partner who is just absolutely incredible now. But what it wasn't these massive quantum leaps of awareness that really helped me on my journey. It was these tiny little 1% changes that I was making regularly. That's what's created the quantum leaps. And so when I look back, I could see these massive jumps and these massive changes. But it was all by putting these tiny little practices throughout my day, throughout my week.
So would you be able to say that you had given your power away originally? Yeah. You had no power. Yeah. And this is why you were okay with all those things that were happening to you. Mm. And once you got some support network and someone was watching out for you, you then realized that you have no power. And you need to get this back in order for your body to heal.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely. And think of how often we are taught to give our power away. So if you are sick, you are taught you go to the doctor. If you are having a problem in the schoolyard, you are taught, rather than sorting it out yourselves, to go to a teacher. If you have a problem with your sibling at home, you tend to go to your parent. You are always taught that the answer lies outside yourself. If you're having a spiritual crisis, you're taught to go to your priest or religious leader or whatever it is. You're never taught to go inward first.
And I always ask people to look in a mirror and can you say, I love you to yourself? 90%, 99% of people can't do that. No. So tell me, after all that you have done, you've done the energy medicine and all of those other components of natural healing, and now you're doing it yourself for others. Can you stand in the mirror and literally say to yourself, I love you. You are beautiful.
Absolutely, I can. Now, the human behaviors sometimes are, obviously hard to get past, but I still know under that externalized, unresourceful human behavior, there is that God source. And it is covered by as many of those things that were stopping me from seeing the true beauty of who I am.
Right. So the fear and anxiety didn't let you look inward.
I didn't trust. So I always had intuitive nudges. My body had been screaming at me for years to get out of the marriage. It had been screaming at me that this was not right.
You didn't trust yourself, or you didn't know how to feel that. Even though you were unhappy, you didn't know why. Yeah. So trust your gut. Always depend first on your gut. That's your second brain. Actually, maybe a first brain. So,
well, in the traditional Australian Aboriginal First Nations people, they actually talk about the heart being the first brain, the gut being the second brain, and the brain being the third brain. And I think that is so true. And again, to agree with that point of yours, is you feel into it with your body. Yeah. Does this feel heavy or light? That is the easiest way to say. If it feels light and it feels exciting and it feels like something you want to move towards, then that's because your soul is saying, yes, this. If it's going, oh, this is dark and heavy and dank and I feel really contracted, that's your soul going, no, I don't want that. Right. It's the same way when we're feeling emotions. If we're feeling angry, it's because we've had our boundaries violated, or we're not feeling safe, or we're afraid of the big feelings that are sitting underneath that anger, like sadness or hurt.
Under normal circumstances, you would want to take a deep breath and realign yourself
Mm.
with your own breath.
And dropping into your body as well. So many people get stuck up in their head and it's overthinking and overthinking and overanalyzing. But when we drop into our body and we can feel into it more, so putting that awareness on the heart space or on the gut, putting your hands there, resting your hands there, because that gives you something to focus on. It helps us drop out of our head. The other thing I say to people is it doesn't matter how cold it is, go and get your face in the fresh air for a bit. Open a window or step outside and feel, I mean, even in the snow, you get sun. Go and have a few big, deep breaths.
Yes.
Go and let that fresh air fill your lungs.
Yeah.
Even if it's just for 3 or 4 breaths, and then go back to what you were doing and see if you can see it with fresh eyes.
Absolutely. That's how quick that can actually reset our nervous system. Good. So I am so happy that we came from where you were to where you are now. And this is wonderful. And we want everybody to come from that same place and arrive to this new you. And this is because our world is falling apart, and we need to regroup. We need to be collectively strong and healthy and happy as much as we can, because our energies are going to influence the energies of the earth.
Being more heart-centered, more soulful, more connected, and understanding that our actions in every area of our life affect everybody else on the planet.
Right.
We cannot get away from that.
So this is why the self-love is very, very important. And it is hard to do when you are starting out, but it's definitely energy medicine, which is in Australia is kinesiology, but in America is energy medicine. And whatever the means of that are Reiki, a professional counseling, or walk in the park without the phone in front of you. That would really be helpful to restore the energies and restore the light in us, inside of us, so that we can become that beam of light, the candle that shines. And eventually this is all going to come together.
Oh, look, for me, I am always hopeful. I know that, you know, when people talk about love and light, I see that as delusion, because we need the shadows as well as the light. We need to understand our shadows so that we can learn to love them as well. And also, it is amazingly transformative, and with the right people, it is the best work you can do, even when it feels tough, because it's the right kind of tough. It is the right kind of tough that is helping us to live more aligned, congruent lives. It is helping us bring more light into the world.
That's exactly we have to strengthen the love muscle, because this is what's going to help us to ride this wave on this plane. Otherwise, we are just going to see what's negative, what's not working, and what could have been. Otherwise, yes. So the love is going to give strength and opens possibilities.
Definitely. Definitely.
Yeah. All right. So perfect. So thank you so much, Amanda. And yes, and I want to show Amanda's website where she does the coaching online, and she can help anyone over Zoom with the energies, with restoration. Can you tell us more about this? I'm going to. Yes.
So the way that it works, so some people go, how do you do kinesiology online? But the same way that we're talking now, we're tuning into each other. We can actually read each other's energy now if we're in that space. Now, obviously, I'm not reading your energy. I am, because I'm looking at your body language and I'm reading your facial expressions and all of that. But in kinesiology, I delve even deeper. So it's like I throw my energetic blanket over you and tune into your specific radio station. And then I'm able to read what's going on in your auric field, what's going on in the entirety of who you are. And that's where we work from. And it's I find it quite fascinating. I was wondering myself at the beginning of COVID how on earth this worked online, because it didn't make sense to me. And as soon as I did my first session, I'm like, oh, that's actually really easy, because we're still just working with energy.
Really?
And energy isn't constrained by anything. So that's how we do it online, is the tuning into the radio station. I'll throw my energetic blanket over you to read what's going on, and then we're able to do that same energetic work just from distance. The only difference is you'll do the corrections on yourself rather than me doing them, which I'd do if you're in person. And then, yeah, all of the information's on my website. So most of my social links, I think, are on there. So It's the best place to start.
Yes. So that's going to be on this website that is listed there. And I love it. So yes, she's in Australia. So there is a little bit of time difference, but it's worth reaching out to find somebody who you can resonate with and help you to lead a happy and healthy life. And of course, look good and feel good.
Oh, lovely. Thank you so much for bringing your light into the world. It's absolutely wonderful. And yeah, keep sharing this work, because it's, so needed right now.
Again, thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.